Part 37. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 361. The man under the moon is wearing a red cassock and holding a Zen staff. His face is compassionate and vicious at the same time. The double-faced Buddha of good and evil. How could he appear here? What surprised me was not just his appearance, but that Miao Fengluan was in his hands right now. Amitabha. The good and evil double-faced Buddha said slowly. When Master Gui saw Miao Fengluan in the hands of the double-faced Buddha of good and evil, his expression froze, and he immediately became furious. Let her go. With that said, Master Ghost rushed towards the double-faced Buddha of good and evil. Seeing this, I didn't dare to neglect, and followed Master Ghost to launch an attack on the double-faced Buddha of good and evil. The double-faced Buddha of good and evil slowly raised his Zen staff and then gently lowered it. Suddenly, several beams of blood flew out of the darkness. I took a closer look and saw that there were 10 bloody eyeballs. The eyeballs circled around the double-faced Buddha of good and evil, and then connected together to form a string of beads hanging around his neck. The double-faced Buddha of good and evil waved his hand, and an eyeball bead rushed towards us. The Ghost Master's expression condensed, and he used soul silk to form a barrier in front of him. The eyeball beads hit the soul thread firmly, and then a powerful yin qi burst out. This powerful yin energy directly knocked Master Ghost away. Before I could react, I felt a flash of blood in front of my eyes. The next moment, I felt my chest was hit hard by something heavy. Immediately afterwards, the whole person flew out like a kite with its string broken. I struggled to stand up and looked at the double-faced Buddha of good and evil not far away. I saw him put his right hand on his chest, and then muttered something. The Supreme Buddha's voice slowly came from his mouth. The Sanskrit sounds are deafening, and every word and sentence directly hits people's hearts. The double-faced Buddha of good and evil slowly raised his hand, and the eyeballs slowly rose along with the movements of the double-faced Buddha. The eyeballs stop when they rise to a certain height. It was at this moment that the Buddha's sound suddenly stopped, and the eyeball in mid-air was growing in size at a speed that could be seen with the naked eye. The whole eyeball is getting bigger and bigger, and bloodshot eyes are filled in the eyeball, just like a broken mirror, with cracks twisting and turning, one after another. In addition, the huge pupil is like the full moon in the sky, and the blood seeped out more and more, dripping onto the ground. The poor monk only wants to Wingilyuan Sha, but he doesn't want to take your lives. As soon as these words came out, another voice sounded from the mouth of the good and evil double-faced Buddha. Aren't you going to take his life? Are you going to wait for him to kill us? The voice was vicious and full of murderous intent. If that's the case, then take their lives. The double-faced Buddha of good and evil slowly lowered his raised right hand, and the eyeballs like moon discs in the sky also fell. The eyeball blocks the moonlight, shrouding us in darkness. The pair of resentful pupils rotated crazily, as fast as a dragonfly's wings flickering. I frowned as I looked at the huge eyeballs that were about to fall. If you are pressed by this thing, I'm afraid it will turn into a meat pie in an instant. I wanted to raise my hand and use Thunderju, but I found that I had lost the ability to move. Suddenly, a frightening yin energy erupted from the eyeballs. I instantly understood what was going on. Its yin energy is strong enough to restrict our actions. I raised my head and looked at my eyeballs. When I met his eyes, I was stunned for a moment. Because I felt a trace of yin qi coming from my right eye, and then it was instantly covered with pitch black ink. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 362. I didn't take the initiative to activate my right eye, but forced. This change caught me off guard. Since my right eye is activated, I can only passively solve the current trouble. I picked up the bloody thunder art and blasted it directly towards the eyeball. Just when the bloody thunderbolt was about to touch the eyeball, it suddenly disappeared. The next second, bursts of thunder came from the inside of the huge eyeball. Suddenly, the bloody thunderbolt penetrates the eyeballs, like a huge bloody thunderball, and like a blood moon hanging in the sky. Plop! The huge eyeball suddenly shattered, and the flesh and blood exploded in the air, just like a blooming flower. The eyeballs disappeared, and the feeling of being pressed disappeared instantly. I looked at the double-faced Buddha of good and evil. At this moment, he was looking at me with surprise. He murmured in a low voice, unexpectedly, "You can control the Nine Eyes Heaven realm in a short period of time. This growth rate is really amazing." Nine Eyes Heaven realm. Is this the name of the right eye? I didn't have time to think too much and rushed towards the double-faced Buddha. The double-faced Buddha of good and evil calmly took out the eyeball beads in his hand and threw them towards me. 9 eyeballs surround me. Then the next second, these eyeballs were hitting me like bullets. Seeing this, I raised my right hand and waved it casually, and the eyeballs instantly stopped in mid-air. I looked at the double-faced Buddha of good and evil, and a black barrier instantly enveloped it. I raised my hand, and these 9 eyeballs instantly appeared in front of the double-faced Buddha of good and evil. Then I lowered my right hand, and my 9 eyeballs shot towards the double-faced Buddha of good and evil with dazzling red light. Seeing this, the good and evil double-faced Buddha directly lifted Miao Fengluan up and blocked it in front of him. My expression froze and I quickly stopped controlling the 9 eyeballs. The good and evil double-faced Buddha burst into laughter. "Boy, do you think you can defeat me if you master the 9 Eyes Heaven realm? You are too naive." I looked at the double-faced Buddha of good and evil coldly. This guy can only be described as sinister and cunning. The double-faced Buddha of good and evil looked at the black barrier and said slowly, "Although the 9 Eyes Heaven realm is tricky, it cannot display its true strength in your hands. It seems that you can only use it to control the objects in this space." I was slightly stunned. What does the phrase double-faced Buddha of good and evil mean? Is it possible that this 9 Eyes Heaven realm has other abilities? I summoned 5 blank heavenly secrets. The secret of 5 heavens will consume all my energy. But I have no choice now, I must rescue Miao Fengluan. The colors of the 5 golden heavenly secrets began to change as I drew them. Gold, cyan, blue, red, brown. 5 talismans appeared in front of me. I took a deep breath, picked up the sword and pointed it at the double-faced Buddha of good and evil. The 5 heavenly secrets disappeared out of thin air. The good and evil double-faced Buddha was slightly startled and looked around, but found no sign of the talisman. At this moment, a talisman emitting blue light appeared behind him. The good and evil double-faced Buddha turned around suddenly and saw the raging water rushing towards him. He staggered and was washed to the ground by the flood. Immediately afterwards, a vine appeared from above, and the slender vine directly wrapped around Miao Fengluan. My expression condensed and I stretched out my hand towards Miao Fengluan. The next moment, Miao Fengluan disappeared in an instant, and when he reappeared, he was already at the corner of the black barrier. I yelled at Mr. Ghost, "Quick! Get Fengluan back!" The Ghost Master didn't dare to neglect, and disappeared in a flash. Just as he was lifting Miao Fengluan up, a pale ghost hand grabbed his wrist. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 363. I saw the double-faced Buddha standing up from the water at some point. He grabbed Master Gui's hand, then raised his Zen staff and smashed it at Master Gui. The yin energy contained in the Zen staff is extremely strong. If it is hit this time, Master Gui may be seriously injured. I quickly focused all my attention on Master Gui and Miao Fengluan. Just when the Zen staff was about to fall on Master Ghost's back, the two of them disappeared out of thin air. The Zen staff of the double-faced Buddha of good and evil hit the ground hard. The green bricks were shattered instantly, kicking up bursts of dust. The disappeared Master Gui and Miao Fengluan were already in front of me when they reappeared. After doing this, I felt like my body was instantly drained of energy, but the pain from the evil spirit didn't come back. The double-faced Buddha of good and evil slams his Zen staff to the ground. He looked at me with vicious eyes and said in a cold tone, "Nine Eyes Heaven Realm is really troublesome." The double-faced Buddha of good and evil walked toward me step by step. I dragged my exhausted body and raised my right hand to activate the Five Elements talisman again. Brown light emerged from the feet of the good and evil double-faced Buddha. In an instant, the ground beneath his feet sank, and the good and evil double-faced Buddha was instantly buried in the soil. I said to Mr. Ghost, "You should leave quickly and go to the city god's temple. We cannot be the opponent of the double-faced Buddha. Only I can stop the double-faced Buddha now." Master Gui stood up, his expression became a little hesitant, and said, "Then what should you do?" I frowned and said, "Don't ask so many questions. The purpose of the double-faced Buddha is Fengluan. As long as she successfully leaves here, nothing will happen to me." Master Gui looked at me deeply, his eyes full of unwillingness. While I was talking to Mr. Ghost, the double-faced Buddha emerged directly from the ground. Seeing this, Master Gui quickly picked up Miao Fengluan and left. "Lu Su. Hold on. Wait for me to come back." Master Ghost shouted at me. I didn't answer, I just looked at the double-faced Buddha. The double-faced Buddha's expression became extremely sinister. "You ant is really annoying." I quickly activated the fire talisman and the gold talisman. Fiery fire and dazzling golden light appeared directly around the double-faced Buddha. I shifted the scope of the Nine Eyes Heaven Realm and moved it in front of the escaped Ghost Master, Miao Fengluan. Then I expanded the scope of the Nine Eyes Heavenly Domain and shook the void towards the two of them. Master Gui and Miao Fengluan disappeared instantly. The two of them have been transferred away by me using the Nine Eyes Heavenly Domain. Although the distance is not far, it is still faster than their escape. At this moment, a strong wind roared in my ears. Zhang Shiai's screams reached my ears. "Lu Su. Be careful." I turned around suddenly and saw the Zen staff of the double-faced Buddha of good and evil already in front of me. I couldn't avoid it, so I was hit directly in the chest by the Zen staff and was knocked away. I only felt a sweet sensation in my throat, and a mouthful of blood spurted out. The Nine Eyes Heaven Realm instantly expired. Zhang Shiai quickly came to me, helped me up, and asked, "Lu Su, are you okay?" I opened my mouth and wanted to speak, but I spit out a mouthful of blood. The double-faced Buddha of good and evil came in front of the two of us. He stretched out his hand and said coldly, "Hand over Gu Luan Shat." Zhang Shiai stood up, looked at the double-faced Buddha, and said nothing. The good and evil double-faced Buddha continued, "Don't forget, what is the meaning of your existence?" Zhang Shiai was startled for a moment, turned around and squatted beside me, stretched out his hand and started groping my body. "No. Can't give it to him." Zhang Shiai looked at me with complicated eyes and said, "For you, I have no choice." As he said that, he took out the soul-locking tower, then cut my wrist and wiped the blood on the soul-locking tower. He threw the soul-locking tower towards the two-faced Buddha of good and evil. Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 364. The double-faced Buddha of good and evil took over the soul-locking tower and directly released Xioxin inside. I think it's because the soul-locking tower is stained with my blood. Before Xiao Xian could say anything, the good and evil double-faced Buddha waved his cassock, and Xiao Xian was taken into his cassock. The double-faced Buddha of good and evil let out an arrogant laugh. He looked at Zhang Shiai and said, "Yes, I did not misjudge you." Hearing this sentence, I was stunned for a moment. I looked at Zhang Shiai in disbelief. The words of the double-faced Buddha of good and evil have made it very clear. There must be some ulterior relationship between Zhang Shiai and the double-faced Buddha. Zhang Shiai sighed helplessly, stretched out his hand, patted my shoulder, and said, "I'm sorry." After saying that, he stood up and came to the side of the double-faced Buddha. I really can't believe that Zhang Xiai betrayed me. No, it should be said that from the beginning Zhang Xiai approached me because he wanted something else. I struggled to stand up, looked at Zhang Xiai angrily, and asked word for word, "Give me an explanation." Zhang Xiai glanced at me lightly and replied, "You will know later." The double-faced Buddha of good and evil seemed a little excited at this time, and the smile on his face was almost crazy. Ha ha ha. The 5 great gods. I have gathered them all. I will achieve my goal next. By then the entire Tianfu city. No. The whole world will worship me as the true Buddha. 5 great evil spirits. Aren't there only 3 on the hands of the double-faced Buddha of good and evil? Besides, hasn't Master Ghost already left with Miao Fengluan? At this moment, dull footsteps sounded behind him. When I looked back, I felt like I had lost my soul. I saw the alchemist wearing a black robe walking towards me with Miao Fengluan on his shoulders. He came to the front of the double-faced Buddha of good and evil, and said in a joking voice, "My respected Majesty, why have you put yourself in such a mess?" I looked at the alchemist coldly. I didn't even have the strength to raise my hand now, let alone save Miao Fengluan. The double-faced Buddha of good and evil came in front of me, raised the Zen staff in his hand and was about to smash it down. Zhang Xiai suddenly shouted, "What are you doing?" He wanted to stop it, but it was too late. At this critical moment, a hand grabbed the Zen staff. I looked at the owner of the hand holding the Zen staff, and was slightly surprised. He turned out to be an alchemist. The alchemist looked at me and said, "He can't die yet." After hearing this, the good and evil double-faced Buddha frowned and asked, "Why?" The alchemist said calmly, "There is no reason." When the good and evil double-faced Buddha saw what the alchemist said, he no longer stopped him and could only put down his Zen staff. Several of them turned to leave. Suddenly, the good and evil double-faced Buddha stopped, picked up the soul-locking tower in his hand, looked at it, and then released the ghost baby inside. The soul-locking tower was casually thrown aside by him. Whether you can survive or not depends on your life. After that, they left the alley without looking back. The first thing the ghost baby did when it came out of the soul-locking tower was to look around. A pair of small eyes looked around, and then focused on me. The corners of his mouth were raised slightly, revealing a row of sharp fangs. If you look closely, you can see that there are actually 2 rows of teeth, which are densely packed and very penetrating. The ghost baby pressed towards me step by step, and then let out a weird laugh. I could only retreat. I raised my hand and wanted to use thunder technique, but the severe pain in my chest made me take a breath. The corner of Guiying's mouth was pulled back crazily, all the way to the back of the ear. He opened his mouth wide and bit me. Sky Coffin. Author, Qingnian Wanbao. Chapter 365. I stepped back, and at this moment, a strong hand put on my shoulder, and then forcefully pulled me back. A familiar figure appeared in front of me. He held his hand in the air, and a morning stick appeared out of thin air in his hand. Xiangyi casually waved his hand, and the suffocating yin qi spread from his body, surging like a river bursting its banks. Just a bang was heard, and the morning stick hit the ghost baby hard on the head. The ghost baby was directly knocked out. Xiangyi turned around, frowned, and asked in a serious tone, "I haven't contacted you in just a few days, why are you so embarrassed?" I raised a wry smile on my lips, sighed, and said, "It's a long story." Xiangyi made a pause gesture and said, "We'll talk about it later." He turned around, holding the morning stick, and walked towards the ghost baby step by step. The ghost baby stood there, his eyes full of viciousness and resentment. "Ghost? Do you know who I am?" Xiangyi looked at Guiying coldly and said, "I don't know, and I don't want to know either." The ghost baby opened his mouth and said with a strange smile, "I am the ghost king of my side, and you, a little ghost, are actually my enemy." Xiang Yi raised the morning stick and pointed it at the ghost baby, with a disdainful smile on his lips. "But you are no match for me now. I don't mind letting you, the ghost king, lose your soul on the spot." Guiying's expression froze, and he glanced at Xiang Yi fiercely and said, "Guicha, I will remember you. I will come to find you when I regain my strength." After saying that, the ghost baby flashed and disappeared into the darkness. Xiang Yi breathed a long sigh of relief when he saw the ghost baby leaving. He turned around and said to me, "How did you mess with him?" I briefly told Xiang Yi about the Yin-Yang ghost town, and Xiang Yi was very surprised. He said, "The identity of that ghost baby is not simple. I can't attack him easily. Besides, it's not certain whether I can beat him." I nodded. Then Xiang Yi asked about what just happened. I told Xiang Yi about the 5 great gods being robbed, and his expression became extremely serious. I asked, "How did you get here?" Xiang Yi explained, "You just sent away 49 missing souls. I thought there was something fishy about this matter, so I came to find you." As soon as Xiang Yi finished speaking, an old man's voice appeared behind us. "Boy! Hand over Gilyuan Shat." Wachenzi appeared from the darkness. Just as he was about to raise the whisk in his hand, he saw Xiang Yi. He quickly put away the fly whisk, his expression instantly became extremely respectful, and he said to Xiang Yi, "Master Xiang." Xiang Yi glanced at Wachenzi coldly and said, "Did you just want to take action against my agent?" When Xiang Yi spoke, he did not suppress the yin energy erupting around him at all. Wachenzi suddenly broke out in cold sweat from his forehead. "No. No, how could I dare to take action against your agent?" Xiang Yi snorted coldly and ignored Wachenzi. I came to Wachenzi, who looked a little nervous. It seems that he is afraid that I will say something that I shouldn't say, and Xiang Yi will take action next time. I looked at Wachenzi and said word by word, "Don't even think about the 5 great evil spirits. They have already been gathered together. I believe that in a few days, the dragon tomb will be opened. What will you do then? What will you do with me, not related?" After that, Xiang Yi and I turned around and left the alley. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sky Coffin. Author, Qingnian Wanbao. Chapter 366. On the way, Xiang Yi asked me with some confusion, "Why did you tell him about the 5 great evil spirits?" I glanced at Xiang Yi and replied, "The opening of the dragon tomb is a foregone conclusion. I can't let the double-faced Buddha get that magic weapon so easily." Xiang Yi was stunned for a moment, then suddenly realized and said, "Do you want to use Taoism to restrict the two-faced Buddha?" I nodded and replied, "But Taoism alone cannot restrict the double-faced Buddha, so I still need to inform other people. Yes, I just want to spread this news to all forces. Ksitagarba, city god of Tianfu, Taoist gate. Even other forces spying on Longzhong. Let these powers restrain each other so that I can take the opportunity to defeat the plan of the two-faced Buddha." When Xiang Yi heard what I was thinking, he took a breath and said, "You are really crazy. Do you know the consequences of these major forces gathering together?" I shook my head and replied, "If you don't even have your life, why are you thinking about the consequences?" After Xiang Yi heard this, he quickly distanced himself from me and said, "I think we should terminate the contract. Do what you are supposed to do, but don't involve me." I rolled my eyes at Xiang Yi and said, "Would you do that?" Xiang Yi shrugged helplessly and replied, "I still want to live a few more days." I smiled slightly, knowing that Xiang Yi just said it casually and he would help me. Suddenly, I saw a familiar figure on the road. The figure collapsed to the ground, his soul body a little unstable. Mr. Ghost. I quickly came to Master Ghost and helped him up. The Ghost Master's condition is very bad, and it seems that he may collapse at any time. I looked at Xiangyi and said, "Help me." Xiangyi rolled his eyes and murmured in a low voice, "It's really unlucky to meet a guy like you. The ocean horse that was promised to me last time hasn't been burned to me yet." Despite complaining, Xiangyi still squatted down, put his hand on Master Gui's forehead, and continuously introduced his own yin qi into Master Gui's body. As the yin qi came in, Master Ghost slowly opened his eyes. He looked around blankly, then stood up suddenly, and said hurriedly, "Lucio, Fengluan has been taken away." I looked at Mr. Ghost, blaming myself in my heart, and said, "I know." The Ghost Master's expression was stagnant, and then he let out a long sigh, looking a little lonely. He scratched his head in annoyance, and said very self-blame, "It's all my fault. If I were stronger, she wouldn't have been captured." I can understand how Master Gui is feeling now. I comforted, "Now that it has happened, we have to find a way to solve it." Master Gui nodded at me and asked, "What should we do now?" I looked at Xiangyi and said, "Please inform the underworld about the dragon tomb." Xiangyi said reluctantly, "This matter is a bit troublesome." I said, "Give you some ghost money. Make a deal." Xiangyi's figure flashed and disappeared instantly. Master Gui and I walked towards the city god's temple. I wanted to tell the city god the news. After wandering around, we arrived at the gate of the Chenghuang temple. But I stopped. Because I saw a familiar figure. The man seemed to feel that someone was coming. He turned back suddenly. When I saw his appearance clearly, he looked stunned and immediately shouted, "Uncle Third! Why are you here?" After the third uncle saw me, he laughed and said, "My good nephew. I miss you so much." Sky Coffin. Author, Qing Nian Wanbao. Chapter 367. The third uncle came to me in one stride and gave me a big bear hug. Seeing my third uncle now, I was very excited. After a brief reminiscing about old times, I asked my third uncle why he came here. The third uncle's expression suddenly became serious. He looked around and lowered his voice and said, "I came to you to help you overcome your calamity." Overcoming the tribulation? I looked at my third uncle with some confusion. The third uncle explained, "The old man once told me that you will encounter a fatal disaster on your 21st birthday. So, let me help you as much as possible." I was slightly stunned. My 21st birthday, isn't that the day after tomorrow? As for the death disaster mentioned by the third uncle, I think I already know what it is. The 5 great evil spirits have now appeared in the void, the 10 evils have been defeated, the Giluan evil, and the Hongluan Tianzi. There is also a 4th waste whose whereabouts are unknown. But the double-faced Buddha of good and evil said that he had gathered all the gods, which meant that he had found the 4 wastes. This is probably the death disaster that the third uncle mentioned. I asked, "Uncle Third, do you understand what I am facing?" The third uncle nodded and replied, "Before coming here, your master has already come to see me once and told me about you. I came to the city god's temple just to find the city god. Of course, this was also instructed by your master." When I heard the word master, I was filled with worry and asked, "Third uncle, where is my master now?" The third uncle looked at me deeply, "Don't worry, she will appear when you need her." Hearing what my third uncle said, most of the stones hanging in my heart fell away. Without hesitation, I walked into the city god's temple and met the city god. I told him about the 2-faced Buddha of good and evil who gathered together the 5 great gods to open the dragon tomb. After hearing this, the city god's face froze, and the smile slowly disappeared, replaced by anger. But as soon as the expression of anger appeared, it was suppressed by the city god. He came to me, laughed and said, "It's okay. It's okay. I didn't think carefully about this matter. Since it has happened, we should find a way. The smile on the city god's face made me feel uneasy. The city god turned around, stood with his hands behind his back, and said, "That magic weapon cannot fall into the hands of any force. Therefore, I will come to the scene in person to contain all forces. All you have to do is snatch that magic weapon. Come." The city god hesitated for a moment, then turned around and looked at me with a smile. "You are the descendant of my Tianfu city god. I feel relieved that the magic weapon is in your hands." I saw hypocrisy on the face of the city god. "Stretch out your hand." I was stunned for a moment, then stretched out my hand. Cheng Huang stretched out his index finger and gently touched my wrist. The next moment, I felt like something penetrated into my body from my wrist. "What's this?" The city god chuckled and replied, "Something to protect your life." After that, the city god waved his hand, indicating that I could leave. Just like that, my third uncle, Mr. Ghost, and I left from the Cheng Huang temple. Along the way, the third uncle's expression was very ugly, and he asked me to extend my hand. I stretched out my hand, and my third uncle stared at my wrist closely, the gloom on his face getting thicker and thicker. "This is not something that saves your life, it's something that takes your life." Uncle San's words didn't surprise me at all. With the character of the city god, how could he give me a trump card to save my life? Even though I know it's not a good thing, I still have to continue it, because if I break up with the city god, it won't be good for anyone. At this moment, a sharp pain suddenly came from my wrist. The pain spread throughout my body and finally concentrated in my heart. Sky Coffin. Author, Qingnian Wanba. Chapter 368. The next second, I felt my heart shaking violently. Immediately, a knife-like pain struck. I clutched my chest, cold sweat broke out, my brows furrowed, and I gasped for air. This heart-wrenching pain is nothing less than the backlash of evil spirits. When the third uncle saw this scene, he grabbed my wrist and muttered something, and then bursts of golden light burst out from my wrist. Third uncle's actions relieved my throbbing heart. But the pain is still there. At this moment, my neck squirmed slightly, and I was stunned. It was Kijumendi. Kijumendi moved quickly from the neck towards the heart. How is this going? Before I could think about it carefully, I felt something crawling crazily from my heart. Suddenly, the thing came out of my heart and headed towards my mouth. Vomit. I couldn't hold it back and started retching. The nausea became stronger and stronger, and the retching movements became louder and louder. Vomit. Stomach acid mixed with most of the digested food and I vomited it out. I wiped the saliva from the corner of my mouth and looked at the filth on the ground. I saw a blood-red insect squirming crazily in the filth. The insect was as big as a thumb, and its body was red, just like a leech. It was at this time that the Kijadream butterfly flew out from between my eyebrows. It flapped its wings and hovered in front of the insect. When the blood-red insect saw the Kijumeng butterfly, it began to twist its blood-red body and flee crazily. Kijumendi looked at the insect for a while, and then flew towards me, its small eyes full of disgust. I was slightly startled, this Kijumendi is so human. It landed on the tip of my nose, and its small eyes stared at me closely, with a bit of anger in their eyes. The corners of my mouth twitched slightly and I quickly said, "It's not my fault. It had to come out of my mouth." Kijumendi still looked at me angrily, and I said tentatively, "How about I give you a bath? And then you eat?" Kijumendi's small eyes were filled with confusion, and then it flapped its wings towards the tip of my nose. I looked horrified and quickly begged for mercy, "Wait until next time. Next time I will definitely find you a clean goo insect." Kijumendi stopped for a moment, folded its wings and looked at me very arrogantly, then flew into the center of my eyebrows. I let out a long sigh of relief. This is really raising an ancestor in one's body. I focused my attention on the escaping goo worm, and I was just about to take steps towards that goo worm. Third uncle stretched out his hand to stop me and said, "Don't come close, that's the heart-eating goo." "Then what should we do?" The third uncle thought for a while and replied, "Heart-eating goo cannot be killed. If it is killed, the city god will know about it, so we can only catch it." After hearing this, Master Goi said, "Let me do this." With that said, the Ghost Master activated the soul thread to wrap up the heart-eating worm. After doing this, we headed to Jiyuntang. The night that was originally full of stars gradually became dense with dark clouds. The dark clouds as thick as ink blocked the moon, and there was no light in the entire night sky. Every few steps he took, there was a thunder in the sky. Immediately afterwards, a lightning bolt as thin as a bucket streaked across the night sky. Immediately, heavy raindrops fell from the sky. I looked up at the night sky, and my heart slowly sank. It's raining, and it's raining hard. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Sky Coffin. Author, Ching Nian Wanba. Chapter 369. After a while, we returned to Jiyuntang. The third uncle sat on the chair of the 8 immortals, pondered for a moment and said, "The 5 evil spirits have emerged, and the conditions for opening the Tianfu formation have been met. If I guess correctly, they will choose to open the formation and open the dragon tomb on your birthday. Seize the magic weapon." I was slightly stunned and asked, "Uncle Third, how did you know that they would choose to act on my birthday?" The third uncle looked at me deeply and replied, "The two-faced Buddha ran out of the sky coffin. His goal is not just the magic weapon, but the entire Tianfu city. When the time comes, he will definitely use your help." Luck opens the coffin of heaven. Open the coffin. I was stunned for a moment. I can only understand how terrifying it is in the sky coffin. But what will be the consequences of opening the coffin? I asked the doubts in my mind. The third uncle shook his head and replied, "I don't know either. I can only tell you that as long as the coffin is opened, the consequences will be disastrous." My expression became more and more solemn. The third uncle stood up, patted my shoulder gently, and said, "The best solution is for you not to show up. If you don't show up, the double-faced Buddha will not be able to open the coffin." After hearing what my third uncle said, I shook my head in denial without even thinking about it. "Third uncle, no, I have to go. If the double-faced Buddha gets the magic weapon, things will get worse and worse. Apart from this purpose, I have another purpose. That is to rescue Miao Fengluan. I can't just watch her die." The third uncle nodded and said, "So, there is only one way now. Any solution? Use the trick and let the two-faced Buddha open the coffin, and you enter the coffin and subdue him completely." The third uncle thought for a moment and then said, "Of course, this is also the path your master has left for you." I nodded and replied, "This is the only way." At this time, there was a knock on the door of Jiyuntang, and my third uncle and I looked at each other. My expression became extremely cautious. I came to the door, stretched out my hand, grabbed the door handle, and then quietly opened a gap. It was drizzling outside, and in the rain curtain, a figure stood quietly in front of the door. My brows instantly wrinkled. I carefully looked at the outline of the figure in front of me, and then immediately froze on the spot. The double-faced Buddha of good and evil. "Donor, don't hide. The poor monk is here to make a deal with you." I opened the door and looked coldly at the double-faced Buddha of good and evil. There was a vague smile on his face. I asked, "What deal?" The good and evil double-faced Buddha kept rubbing the eyeball beads in his hand. He slowly said, "Use your Zaiwei luck to exchange for that girl's life." "Really? Uncle San is right? The purpose of the good and evil double-faced Buddha is far more than just a magical weapon. I looked at him coldly and said nothing, and the good and evil double-faced Buddha continued, if you agree, you will come to Muang Reservoir in 2 days. After saying that, the good and evil double-faced Buddha turned around and disappeared into the rain. I closed the door, feeling very complicated. The third uncle came to me, patted me on the shoulder, and said, Ziwei's luck can only be released on his own initiative and cannot be snatched away, so he came here to make this deal. I nodded towards my third uncle and said nothing. The third uncle sighed, sat next to me, and comforted me, but you don't have to worry, your master has arranged everything, you can go ahead and do it boldly, we are all standing behind you. Third uncle's comfort seemed to have some effect. I stood up and said to third uncle, okay, third uncle, I understand. After that, I got up and headed to the second floor, to Huaxiu's room. Sky Coffin. Author, Qingnian Wanbao. Chapter 370. I came to the coffin and looked at the sleeping Huaxiu. I slowly reached out my hand and caressed her cheek. Huaxiu, brother has something to do. I don't know if I can come back alive this time. If I can come back alive, I will definitely take you to know the world again. If you want to deal with the double-faced Buddha of good and evil. Huaxiu is a very powerful helper. But she's in a deep sleep now and can't help me. Even if she is awake, I don't want her to take risks with me. After saying goodbye to Huaxiu, I returned to the first floor. The third uncle was talking to Mr. Ghost. At this moment, a gust of cold wind came, and Xiangyi came into my eyes. His brows were furrowed and his expression was extremely ugly. He came to me and said, I have revealed the news. Now all the forces in the underworld are surging and they all plan to snatch this magical weapon. I nodded and said, sorry to trouble you. Xiangyi waved his hand and looked at me with worry in his eyes. He said, what are you going to do about this? I thought about it and told Xiangyi my plan. Xiangyi was slightly stunned after hearing this, then sighed and said, this is the only way right now. However, it would be too dangerous for you to go to Muang Reservoir alone. So, I will go with you. I shook my head at Xiangyi and replied, I can do this by myself. If you insist on helping me, help me contain the two-faced Buddha. Xiangyi agreed without thinking. He stretched out his hand, patted my shoulder and said, don't worry, I will definitely be on your side. If something happens to you, who will help me with my performance? I smiled helplessly. At this moment, the door of Ji Yuntang was pushed open. Xia 11 put away her umbrella and placed it on the doorframe, then combed her hair that was wet from the rain. Xia 11, why are you here? I asked a little surprised. Xia 11 smiled at me and said, Master Tianqian asked me to help you. Master? I asked doubtfully, my master asked you to help me. Xia 11 nodded. She came to me and stared at my face closely. After a while, she said, Master Tianqian asked me to paint your skin so that you can take action. I quickly asked, did she say anything else? Xia 11 pondered for a moment and replied, she said she had her own arrangements for this matter. All you have to do is sneak into the reservoir in advance, wait for the opportunity, enter the dragon tomb as soon as it opens, and snatch the magic weapon, because only that magic weapon is your key to dealing with the double-faced Buddha. I was slightly startled. It turned out, Su Tianqian had already arranged everything. Xia 11 took out the tools for painting, came to my bedroom, and asked me to lie on the bed. I will draw you like an ordinary person later, and then your aura and other things will change. I nodded towards Xia 11 and said with a smile, sorry to trouble you. Xia 11 started to help me paint my skin. Half an hour later, Xia 11 stopped what she was doing. She stretched out her slender hands, gently covered my face, and then murmured something. A layer of white mist lingered on my face, then slowly sank and blended into my skin. All right. Xia 11 clapped her hands and smiled sweetly at me. I stood up and went to the mirror. When I saw myself in the mirror, I was stunned for a moment.